After my many videos covering how most every alien changed Ben 10, it's finally time I got around to ranking and reviewing each and every alien across the four major series. Beginning with the classic series, then Alien Force through Ultimate Alien, and wrapping things up with the aliens introduced in Omniverse. I apologise to any reboot fans out there, I haven't got around to seeing it yet, so no overflow or shock rock chat today. What I'm getting at is, we'll be covering every alien introduced in the Prime series of Ben 10. I'll be dividing them up into groups depending on which series they were introduced in, covering them for the most part in order as they were introduced into the show. We're using the format probably invented by, but if not, certainly popularised by LS Mark, where we'll cover one at a time, give them a placing, then at the very end of the video, go over all of them in rapid succession, from lowest to highest on the list. So getting into things, we're starting things particularly strong with Heat Blast. Him being the fire alien is a simple enough power set that develops and becomes more complex as the show goes on. There's something so fundamentally iconic about his design. The segmented section of volcanic rock surrounded by flames has always been so cool to me, especially his look from Future Ben in the episode Ben 10,000 with those shoulder plumes. On that, every Heat Blast look works well, but I especially like what they did with him come Omniverse with those exaggerated shoulders and somewhat more refined face. The way the eyes connect to the rest of the head especially is a nice detail. I touched on his powers before, but they mostly boil down to pyrokinesis and everything that surrounds that. I quite like the way that was later used to give him flight as well, really highlights just how far Ben can push these transformations the more he uses them. I have a suspicion Heat Blast is going to place reasonably high on this list, great start. Next up we have Wildmutt, who I didn't have so much of an appreciation of when this series first aired, but I have grown to really enjoy, even though I think he's best used in the classic series. His inconsistent sizing aside, there's something so unique about Wildmutt, the daredevil-like radar sense, the physicality and the way he maneuvers about the place has always been really great. The overall look is generally simple enough, but is elevated by those gills and whiskers. I use this clip in just about every video I get an excuse to, but the episode where Ben jumps Hex as Wildmutt and you get a glimpse of Hex's perspective as this enormous monstrous dog alien is snarling at him is just so great. He's also an alien that we meet other members of the species early enough into the series that look quite different from Ben. Really gives the idea that these transformations are 10-year-old counterparts of that species, Ben meeting these enormous, more ferocious feeling members of the same species that have been trapped in the null void. I'll be placing Wildmutt under Heat Blast, though that's no discredit to Wildmutt by any means. Moving on to Diamond Head, who like Wildmutt we did get to meet another member of the species pretty early on into the series, even if growing up I assumed this came much later towards the tail end of the show. I grew up in Australia watching Ben 10 for the most part on free-to-air television when it aired, so I saw a lot of episodes out of order and just sort of had to piece bits and pieces together. Back to Diamond Head though, he's an all-timer transformation. I think it'd be hard to dispute just how memorable Diamond Head was and continues to be. Apart from his occasional surprising weaknesses like two vibrations, he always felt so solid. He always felt like, in the classic series at least, like Ben's best all-rounder. He was a bruiser who wasn't quite as strong as Forearms, but also felt way stronger than the other 8. That and his abilities were so versatile, being able to reshape his body into all sorts of constructions and generate crystal structures all over the place. He's also Ben's first alien we see him actively train on screen. Something that certainly feels like a payoff in the future series when, after getting absolutely handed to him by Vilgax, Ben re-unlocks Diamond Head and absolutely wipes the floor with him, using an alien that he's had that much experience with. That and his look is always perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. Though the inconsistencies with how his mouth is presented is a bit odd, seems like the series chops and changes how that works. Next time you're watching, pay attention to how his jaw moves when he speaks. Diamond Head will be taking Heat Blast's place at the top of the list, at least for now. Moving on to the speedster of the classic series, we've got Accelerate. I'm sure I'm sounding like a broken record by this point, but another immediately iconic alien. He's a black and blue velociraptor on wheels, and saying that out loud doesn't quite do Accelerate justice on how cool he was. Again, it may be a classic thing more than anything, but another alien who has some pretty inconsistent proportions. Inconsistencies or not, he has such a great look, that visor especially. There's something about speedsters in fiction that just works for me, and Accelerate is up there with the best of them. Not my favourite episode, but in the baseball episode of Classic, it blew my 6-year-old mind seeing him move so fast, time may as well have stopped. I was pretty stumped about where to place Accelerate. I'm tentatively placing him above Heat Blast but below Diamond Head, but it wasn't an easy decision between him and Heat Blast. Again with simple power sets but an immediately iconic alien, we've got Grey Matter, the brains of the initial 10. That musical theme that plays most every time Ben uses him is burnt into my memory in a good way. When the series first aired, I was right there with Ben, feeling a bit, oh man, with Grey Matter transformations, but like some of the others, I've come to appreciate him more and more as time went on. He can't punch his way out of every situation, or any situation really, but that leads to a lot more fun problem solving when he's up against what or whoever, even if it does often boil down to him using that brain to damage some technology, be it a robotic suit, a mainframe, or whatever. Another close call, I'm sure there'll be a lot more of these, but he'll be going above Wildmutt but below Accelerate. Now the exact opposite of Grey Matter, we've got Forearms, who as the series will make abundantly clear, he is, for now, Ben's absolute favourite alien. Being the guy who can punch his way out of any situation, and if that isn't work, just hit harder. And with that, Forearms becomes the go-to alien for so many incredible action sequences. There's too many to list, but off the top of my head, his fight against Kevin, actually both his initial fights against Kevin, along with his fight in the graveyard, are absolute standout moments for me. Those and the episode Ready to Rumble, which is mostly just Forearms doing punch-ons. He's also absolutely massive in the classic series. It does seem to vary a bit, but he's consistently a big unit. I didn't realise I liked Forearms so much, but he'll be going just above Heat Blast, and it's largely down to the way they used Forearms. Next up, and going into this, I think he'll be easy to place. We've got Stinkfly, who again, I wasn't too crazy on as a kid. I never discounted him like I did Wildmutt or Grey Matter, but I also haven't grown to appreciate him quite as much. The thing I do like about him most is his voice. His abilities boil down to flight and being able to shoot out this green goop. Maybe not the right term to use given later entries in this list, but that'll be right for now. His look is pretty great, it nicely fits his power set, those wings in his head especially work for me. Though I did find his head confusing when I first watched the series, not realising the little orange details were his eyes and presuming the Omnitrix functionally acted as a singular eye in the middle of his head. I think we'll be placing him below Wildmutt. While we're on the more creature-looking aliens, let's get into our first water alien with Ripjaws. Ben gets him in an episode where he's not in water, and I was stressing, it only being a matter of time until he'd need water to breathe. But put him in the water and he was an absolute demon. Growing up, there was something so frightening about Ripjaws, being based on a deep-sea fish with that little dangly bit on his head. That, those eyes, and the unhinging jaw that felt like it could rip apart anything in the series. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it's a bit odd the Omnitrix didn't give him a breathing apparatus, but I also feel like that made for more engaging storytelling. We'll be slotting him in nicely between Heat Blast and Grey Matter. Moving on to Upgrade, who even amongst the original 10, felt so unique to me. Being this really great alien that just seamlessly goes from solid to liquid, maneuvering about the place, fusing with and upgrading technology. It always made for really fun sequences. That and the contrast between all the white space in his front with the black and green patterns on his back and upper body just balanced so nicely. Wasn't as crazy about how they swapped out that white for green in Ultimate Alien, but it's fine. The other thing that frustrated me as a kid was that he never ever absorbed machinery into himself. Oh, and the one time he used an eye laser was especially cool. He was just always such a treat to see. He'll be going below Diamond Head but above Accelerate. And the final of the original 10 before we move on to the later inclusions, we've got Ghost Freak. Ben's, as the name suggests, ghost alien who has all the abilities you'd imagine, like intangibility, flight, and so on, but also had that more mysterious fear component to him, being able to open up his skin, revealing this nightmarish horror, literally scaring a series villain until they exploded. From there, there's everything with Ghost Freak actually being a sentient being called the Scare, but we've covered that enough outside of this. Worth noting anyway. I love this alien, this design is perfect, the way his eye can move about all along his black details across the body, the way the tendrils come out, and when the aliens re-unlocked in later series, the possession ability is a lot of fun. That and I really like the chains, I think they bring so much to the design, it feels representative that the transformation's under Ben's control now, rather than being another member of the species trapped in the Omnitrix. I would have preferred if those chains were grey rather than green, but it still fits. We'll be putting Ghost Freak above Accelerate but below Upgrade. Getting into it with Ghost Freak's replacement following him escaping the Omnitrix, we've got Cannonbolt. Much like a few upcoming aliens, having a whole episode dedicated to his first appearance. Ben slowly working out what he can do and finding his niche. That niche being turning Ben into a bouncy wrecking ball. Another victim of the series changing the size of the alien from appearance to appearance. A really fun alien overall with a simple but effective power set. I especially liked his first confrontation with Kevin, where Ben's new 11th alien takes on an amalgam of all his previous 10. He'll be going above grey matter, but just below Ripjaws. Wildvine introduces us to our first plant alien. I was never too fussed on him. Later series gave me more of an appreciation for this one, for sure. I really like the Venus flytrap style bits either side of his head. I've always wondered if this took inspiration from the Naruto villain Zetsu, since he first appeared in the manga I think in 2004, so the timeline would line up, but I can also see it being two series independently coming up with the same idea, with two characters with Venus flytraps for heads. His powers come down to three components: controlling plants, maneuvering about his body in all sorts of interesting stretchy ways, and producing these exploding fruits. I appreciate him, but he's not my favourite. He's going to go below Stinkfly at the bottom of the list for now. Next up is an alien that just oozes charm. Spitter is one of the few aliens introduced in Ben 10,000, as an alien our current Ben is yet to unlock. His powers are so incredibly simplistic. He's a pufferfish alien who blows up, fills himself with ooze, and then shoots it out with ridiculous force. So much force, he's able to knock back a future Kevin 11, now Kevin 11,000, who's got the combined strength of those 11,000 aliens, though I suppose to be more like 10% of that ooze 11,000, so what would that be? The strength of about 1,100 various aliens in one kaiju-sized body, and Spitter's able to push him back, along with a future Vilgax who's been engineered to counter every Omnitrix alien. I love Spitter's design and his really simple but effective power. He's going right above Cannonbolt, but below Ripjaws. Buzzshock's another Ben 10,000 alien, though we do have Ben come up against a bunch of this species in the episode Tourist Trap. He's a fun, energetic little battery alien that can zip around and travel through telephones and power lines, fly and zap people. Not a lot to him, but he's not too bad. I like the design quite a bit, it's quite simplistic but fun. I still think I slightly prefer Wildvine over him. Bottom of the list for now. Artiguana is the counterpoint alien to Spitter in my mind, who received a lot more attention, and by that I mean infinitely more attention in later series. Being Ben's first ice alien who, other than being surprisingly strong and nimble, can shoot out beams of ice and freeze people. I do like that he's an iguana alien for sure. I'd say above Wildvine but below Stinkfly. I'll be honest, Blitzwolfer, or Benwolf as he was called at the time, is going to place pretty highly on this list. We've got a whole episode dedicated to Ben unlocking him, all the while thinking he's being turned into a werewolf due to an Omnitrix malfunction. Classic Benwolf looks great. That alone makes him feel like he makes Wildmutt nearly redundant. He feels stronger, faster, and super threatening. There's a real fear factor here, not quite Ghost Freak, but it's there. Shame we never see classic Ben use him again. But what really makes him, for me at least, is the way the jaw opens up into 4 sections in what now reminds me a bit of the Demigorgon from Stranger Things. He opens that mouth and shoots out a sonic howl that's just a fantastic ad that really makes him feel so alien. Right now, Blitzwolfer is replacing Diamond Head at the top of the list. Sticking on theme with the horror trio aliens, we've got Snarrow, or at the time Ben Mummy, whichever you'd rather, but following classic series, Snarrow is what I think works better. Really unique alien. There's something about the lanky proportions that just works for me. He feels agile, but at the same time, those bandages are so solid. The DNA sample is just as terrifying as Blitzwolfer, if not more so, and the action sequences between him and Accelerate is a series highlight. I also like in later series that it's pretty much the headpiece as a core and the bandages just come out from there. I'm surprised how high I'm placing him, but above Accelerate, but below Ghost Freak. And finishing up the Halloween or horror trio with Ben Victor or Frankenstrike. We're going with Frankenstrike. I think Ben Victor is a very silly name. Frankenstein's monster stand-in. Please feel free to comment about Frankenstein is the scientist, but who's the true monster or whatever. There's something about a patchwork electrical Frankenstein alien that just works. I don't so much like his milder look in Classic, despite being Australian myself, but his look come Omniverse is an all-timer. I absolutely adore it. I especially love the look of Benzaro's Frankenstrike, but I don't think I should count that too much towards this list. Above Snarrow but below Ghost Freak, though it could go either way really. Upchuck. He's certainly cute, and his somewhat horrifying tongue tendrils that come out and take in anything nicely contrast that. Then using whatever he's eaten to somewhat proportionally, convert that matter into energy that he then spits back up as projectiles. I think he's really fun, elevated by moments like fighting against the -10, and the classic version is my personal favourite. I know there's 2 subspecies of Upchuck, Perks and Mercs, but I'll be grouping them together for the sake of I find them reasonably interchangeable ranking-wise. I think we're going to put him above Arctiguana, but below Stinkfly. Next up is our Animaniacs stand-in with Ditto, Ben's first cloning alien. I love how seamless this design is. The predominantly white and black design with a hint of green in the eyes is great. He just oozes with personality. The duplicating ability is so much fun, with the downside that each clone shares the pain of one another. Maybe not an ideal alien for action sequences, but it leads to fun moments. I especially like his introductory episode with Dr. Animo. Ditto's going above Snero but below Frankenstrike. Another real freaky one that somehow isn't an Anor system alien like Ghost Freak, Frankenstrike, Snero, and Benwolf, we've got Eye Guy, one of my absolute favourite looks in the show. Those bat ears are great, the eyes moving around his body and combining into one giant eye in the centre of his chest for an Iron Man style unibeam is great. Also, him having all sorts of elemental powers feels a bit disconnected, but he's overall so much fun, I just don't care. Definitely towards the top end of the list, I'd say above Frankenstrike, but below Ghost Freak. And finishing off the classic list in a big way, we've got Way Big, who single-handedly had the most impactful introduction, being introduced in the Secrets of the Omnitrix film, where he just elevates where Ben sits on the hierarchy of power in the universe, absolutely eclipsing Vilgax and setting a new precedent for where aliens can go from here. Just the sheer scale of this alien, particularly in the film, is so well done. He's big and he can shoot a laser beam. Above Ripjaws, but below Heat Blast. Now moving on to aliens introduced in Alien Force, and again a really strong start, with the somehow perfect blending of a plant and fire alien, which by no means should work but simply does with Swampfire. This is a phenomenal transformation. The way it blends these seemingly contrasting abilities into one species is spectacular, and the regeneration since he's a plant man is a great added element. Also visually he's great. I think the way that his body looks like it's made up of wet vines warping around this black core that runs into the head design with those red and yellow details really works. I quite like those little quills as well. I'm probably in the minority of people who quite like the blossomed form for Swampfire come Omniverse. I understand that it's quite a deviation, but I feel it works. It's not as good as the original, but I like the idea. Presumably he would go back to normal when he's out of season, but I don't know. He's going above Frankenstrike, but below Eye Guy. Echo Echo introduces us to our second cloning alien, also our second alien with sound-based abilities, and once again, he seamlessly blends the two elements together. Somewhat or very much resembling the 2008 Apple iPod aesthetic, I tend to lean more towards his later design come Omniverse. Echo Echo, for me, is not only a great alien, but is elevated even more by just how fun his action sequences are. I like how lightweight the clones feel, being tossed about the place, and it's especially great seeing them all use their abilities in tandem. Below Way Big, but above Ripjaws. Humungosaur is an absolute pillar of Alien Force. He's somewhere between Forearms and Way Big in both scale and utility. I feel like this alien's a bit divisive to some, especially down by Wonder. He's sort of a hit anything hard, and if you can't, grow larger and hit it harder kind of alien. I feel like there was so much presence to this alien in Alien Force, pretty much up until his ultimate was introduced, who I love by the way, but following that they did just stop including his ability to grow, and with that he lost a lot of that oomph he had prior. Above Way Big, but below Heat Blast. Jet Ray's one I've only recently grown a fondness for working on these videos. He's our manta ray alien with ridiculously fast flight and laser beams. What won me over more recently is just how great the action choreography with Jet Ray really is. Every moment feels so fluid, and I like how, amongst the Alien Force roster of largely humanoid guys, he stands apart with how he's very alien looking still. He'll be going below Stinkfly but above Arctiguana. I've been keen to talk about Big Chill extensively for a while now. This is my boy. Once again, an alien that seamlessly blends two elements of previous aliens, Big Chill functionally taking Ghost Freak's place as the intangible ghost alien, and Arctiguana's spot as the ice alien. There's something so seamless to this blue moth alien, especially the way those wings become a cloak. He's just so sleek. Every time this alien's on screen, it's a real treat. The way he can freeze someone with ice breath or just by flying through them with his intangible body being so cold it freezes things as he goes through. The elephant in the room here, especially with the sleekness element I praise so highly, is that Omniverse makes him an absolute physical tank, which doesn't line up remotely with the alien. However, I did, and admittedly incredibly slowly, warm up to this look too, even if it does take away from that sleekness factor I like so much. What I haven't warmed up to is this larger look's cloaked form. It looks less stealthy, mysterious alien, and more like a beggar from a 2000s Disney film. When thinking on Big Chill, I just can't go past the time Ben transformed into him and had that speech about he is one of everyone during Ultimate Alien. He's also taking Blitzwolfer's place as my number one alien. Chromastone just all round is pretty great. They've got pretty big shoes to fill here, being the spiritual successor to Diamond Head, and he just doesn't disappoint. The initial look works so nicely, the purple and pinks just feel so right on him, especially in tandem with the visuals they give to his abilities, and in what is one of my favourite abilities in fiction, he can absorb and redirect energy. And the look of that is just stellar, even by Ben 10 standards. below Cannonball but above Grey Matter. I want to take a quick moment before we move on just to stress how close this list is. There's one alien on this list that I knew right from the start would end up being in last place, and even then, I'm just not that fussed on them visually. Most of this list is very tightly grouped together. In saying that, this next entrance list probably won't be super high. Brainstorm is not only the brains of the Alien Force playlist, but unlike Grey Matter, he can handle himself in a fight with his electrical abilities. He's a bit of fun. I tend to enjoy the way Ben carries himself when he uses Brainstorm. The speech pattern, as tiresome as I'm sure it would get if the series only followed Brainstorm, is charming. I tend to like him a lot more with the few visual tweaks in Omniverse, especially when we see how an alien this intelligent processes information and acts accordingly. Above Wildvine, but only because I like the Omniverse version so much, Alien Force alone would be much lower. Spider Monkey fits the same mold as Jet Ray for me. Only in recent times have I grown to appreciate them as much as I have, and it's because the people working the show clearly put so much love into every action sequence involving him. Him being our Spider-Man stand-in for the show, he's a small package but really packs a punch. And unlike Brainstorm, I much prefer his earlier look over the Omniverse appearance. He's interchangeable on this list with Jet Ray for me, probably just below. Goop feels like he harkens back to the straightforward but effective design principles of the classic series. He's a formless goop alien that the Omnitrix grants a gravity projector to keep his shape. Again, really great action sequences here, especially the further you get into the show. The projector even becomes more exciting as things go on. We see it weaponized as a projectile, eventuating in Ben realizing he can just use it to give Goop flight. Really fun alien, super straightforward. The only tidbit and something to think about, if he's pretty much formless and the gravity projector is allowing that, is he humanoid shaped because that's how Ben chooses to be, or are they all kind of like that? Anyway, Goop is above Ripjaws but below Echo Echo. This one's controversial and I'm a bit nervous to get to his placement. We have Alien X, the alien that forever changed the series, versus battles and power scalers lives forever. He's an all-powerful alien that when used, places Ben in a void with Alien X's two personalities, who he has to debate with in order to take any action. And with that, they want him to remain there independently to act as a tiebreaker for them. So there's a lot of weight to every use of this transformation. It's a last resort, functionally sacrificing Ben's humanity at the cost of infinite power in a worst case scenario. That is, until Omniverse, when Ben gains full control over Alien X. Also visually, this is a stunning alien, particularly in Alien Force. The big chin is very Omniverse and a bit of fun, but not so visually striking. I really like my big strong guy aliens, but why does he have to have the Broly build? I remember in 2008, there was so much mystery behind what this alien could possibly be leading up to his big reveal. Really difficult one to place here, tentative between Heat Blast but above Humongousaur. Now a much less controversial alien, Lodestar. He's just great. I love the separation of his head to body. His look so clearly lines up with the power set of basically Magneto-style magnetism. The earthy yellow and browns work so nicely against the metal head. Simple but effective power sets are a theme I'm really seeing I lean towards. Above Alien X but below Heat Blast. Nanomech is an odd one. I've spoken about him a bit, but a half-human, half-nanobot made for Ben by the Omnitrix is odd. I wasn't fussed on the look up until Omniverse, where it really won me over. A bit like Grey Matter, sequences with Nanomech often result in Nanomech breaking machinery from the inside. They've got electricity, flight, and they can shrink. Bottom of the list for now. And to wrap up Alien Force, we've got the main man, Wrath. Again, just oozes with personality, but far more than any other transformation, totally changing the way Ben behaves. I love this Wolverine Hulk Hogan kind of personality it puts on Ben. The big strong guy, near indestructible tiger with a Wolverine claw is a lot of fun. I like that situations with Wrath are often escalated by just how aggressive Wrath is, and a great simple look. I should say, I know he's not actually indestructible, but he feels like he is. John DiMaggio also elevates him to even higher heights. I'm thinking he's going above Snero but below Ditto. And that rounds out the Alien Force roster. Moving on to the alternate alien era of the series, and beginning with a group that's especially near and dear to my heart, we have the Andromeda 5, starting with Water Hazard. The waterbender alien who I only somewhat recently realised has a near indestructible exoskeleton. Water Hazard, along with his other Andromeda Galaxy contemporaries, really feel like they brought with them a new expectation of aliens from here on out. It feels as if none of Ben's regular aliens stood a chance against them. I'm particularly partial to his Omniverse look, where they make him look much more crustacean. Below Ripjaws, but above Spitter. Next up is Amphibian, another electrical alien, this one being a jellyfish, which I somehow didn't realise on my initial watch of the show. Another great example of really non-humanoid looking alien design. They're also another example of an alien being able to convert their body into electricity and travel along power lines and that. Again, as far as scenes with it, the first action sequence with the DNA sample is a real highlight. Below chromostone, but above grey matter. I have such a soft spot for Armadillo. He's another big, strong guy alien, but with the twist that the DNA donor, despite being a walking tank, is a timid, gentle giant. The alien is capable of, and I quote this a little bit too often, of walking through rock as we do air. He can also transform his arms into drills and create enormous earthquakes. And on theme with most of the Andromeda Galaxy aliens, he's an absolute damage sponge, being able to survive quite a lot. Above Eye Guy but below Ghost Freak. Terraspin isn't my absolute favourite of the bunch. He can spin around, use wind, and fly about the place. Solid design, however. I like the torso vents and how he retracts into his shell as he spins. The mana immunity is a fun detail, unexplained, but I quite enjoy it. This is very much an example where I like Ben's transformation much more than the DNA sample, unlike most of the Andromeda Galaxy aliens. Below Jet Ray, but just above Spider Monkey. And to end things strong, we have NRG, an alien that has two distinct modes. One is a containment suit that mirrors the DNA donors, where he's, again, a nearly indestructible walking tank that can use his radiation-based abilities to heat up elements of that suit, affecting others or the environment, along with using the grates in the faceplate to shoot out blasts. And the other mode is when Ben opens up that suit, releasing the alien inside, who is living radiation, allowing Ben to now zip around the place, who can now zip about the place without the suit. They can also absorb radiation, growing larger and more powerful, but we don't see Ben do that. I knew I liked NRG, but I didn't realise how high he'd place going into this, below Diamond Head and above Upgrade. Moving into the other alternate alien editions, we've got our black and blue speedster alien in Fast Track. He's fast, he's a cat alien, and he doesn't quite have enough to set him aside from Accelerate, but I'd be a broken record to go too far into that. I think there's a bit that works here. I reckon people would have been more forgiving if there was more to set him apart, whether that be visually or in his abilities. I've seen ideas to make him lean more into the cat aesthetic, or have him generate more momentum or something like that. But unfortunately that's not the case. He is physically stronger than Accelerate, but feels slower. Fast Track's taking Nanomech's spot at the bottom of the list for now. Clockwork, a bit like Alien X, is so vastly different from series to series. In Ultimate Alien, I'm not really a fan, but as Ben starts to use his abilities come Omniverse, along with the design adjustment come Omniverse, I began to really enjoy Clockwork. He's a big bulky gear man who can control time, shoot time rays. He's probably the most powerful alien other than Alien X. As far as highlight moments go, it would probably be the inclusion in the Then There Were None two-parter, maybe just below Way Big, but above Ripjaws. Chameleon has warmed on me in recent times, but not enough to place too high in this list. I like the two shades of purple in his skin, and the invisibility is fun, and unlike some of the other aliens with straightforward abilities, there isn't enough here for me to really sink my teeth into. Above Fast Track, but below Buzzshock. Eagle's another example of functionally being two different aliens depending on the series. Mostly visually though. I personally liked Omniverse more, where he goes from a robotic bug to really leaning into that more bug design. I really love what they did with him. That being said, I didn't mind the old more robotic looking design. He functions a lot like a more beefy upchuck, eating whatever kind of matter and converting it into energy and shooting blasts from his horn. He's a bit of fun, kind of feels similar to Spitter for me. As such, he's going just under Chromostone, but above grey matter. My thoughts on Jerry Rig may surprise you if you haven't caught an older video of mine talking about him, but I love Jerry Rig. Not so much in Ultimate Alien though. In that series, he's so ugly it almost comes back around and again gives him a bit of a cursed charm. But in Omniverse, they made him perfect. His abilities feel like a gag power set and I'm all for it. With almost speedster-like abilities, he can't run about the place real quick, but he can dismantle and reassemble technology, any technology, including living beings like clockwork species or whatever. He's also just a lot of fun. That and his World War II gremlin-inspired flight suit, and being just a little guy is so much fun. Above Spitter, but below Frankenstrike. Shock Squatch is yet another electrical Yeti alien, well, another electric alien, not another Yeti. Weirdly enough, introduced in the Generator Rex crossover with a very different look, though the power set does feel consistent. I quite like the way he activates his abilities and to generate that electricity, he rubs his hands together, his fur reacting to that electricity, him then channeling it through those metallic bits along his body. I really like the Omniverse look too. It's certainly a bright yellow, but it really suits him. Action sequences with him are most often a real treat as well. His fight against Sunder is a real highlight for me. That and him absolutely bodying all the Chimera amalgams we see in the Thank God It's Saturday crossover in Omniverse, taking out an entire army all at once. Shock Squatch is going above Accelerate but below Snarrow. And finally, moving into Omniverse. Starting with an alien that so perfectly fits in with the classic series, we have Feedback, yet another electrical alien, and one I have a real soft spot for. His design is absolutely flawless. He borrows elements that really make him feel classic. That colour palette and eye especially. The plugs in his head and tendrils work as well. And different than Chroma Stone, but he can also absorb and redirect energy in a big way, which like I said earlier, is one of my favourite abilities in fiction. That, and he just has this really great feeling to him. It's like a treat whenever he appears, especially following Ben losing access to him before then regaining him in the Malware two-parter. There's too many highlights to list, but I personally go back to the time he drained the life out of the Secret Saturday villain Argos and just shoots all that life force he stole into the atmosphere. Feedback is going below NRG, but just above Upgrade. Now one that people seem to be entirely split on, Blocks is Ben's Lego Gorilla alien that became the focal point of people's dislike of just how large the jump from Ultimate Alien to Omniverse was. And Blocks feeling so far removed from the classic series approach to alien design got the brunt of it. While I was very guilty of disliking Blocks when first seeing the stills of the transformation, I have come to somewhat enjoy him. He can zip about the place and build himself up, swinging around a bit like Spider-Man, turning himself into all sorts of structures, which vary drastically in durability. Overall, I think people don't really mind him now, but would have rathered a few tweaks here and there. In saying that, we'll put him below Fast Track at the bottom of the list for now. Gravitac was one of the aliens that initially won me over to Omniverse when I finally gave it a chance. For those unfamiliar, I adore Omniverse now. That initial unsureness was more so when I first watched it. Anyway, Gravitac is this living miniature planet that has gravity-based abilities. Another superpower that's up there with my all-time favourites. I love how big and bulky he feels. Just like a lot of the others on this list that I praise, their design reflects their power set so nicely and it just works. I particularly like those black divots running along his body between the rockier sections. Above Lodestar but below Heat Blast. A real strong Omniverse addition. Crashhopper is very straightforward. Not as much so as Spinner, but he's a grasshopper alien giving him the abilities one would imagine. He springs about the place, which leads to fun action sequences in typical Omniverse tradition. I especially like how his legs are always just a twitch away from sending Ben absolutely flying. They just feel so effectively powerful. And I quite like when Ben used that leg against Kevin's Omniverse amalgam form, kicking it and forcing him to spring up. Above Chameleon, but below Buzzshock. Ball Weevil's placement won't be an enormous surprise to anyone who's been watching my videos for some time. He's Ben's Katamari dung beetle alien that spits out this green goop, rolls it up into a ball, slowly growing in size and output as it goes. I really enjoy his powers actually, but visually I'm not crazy on this one. I think it's the headpiece mostly. In saying that, I don't mind little guy aliens by any means, but the visuals just bring him down for me. Bottom of the list. I wouldn't bet on any future aliens getting any lower. Walker Trout on the other hand is a lot of fun, even with such a goofy design that I initially wasn't too keen on, and I'm not too fussed now. His abilities boil down to being slippery, which means he's nearly untouchable and just leads to slapstick style action sequences where whoever's trying to get to him, villain or not, they're having a difficult time. I'd say probably below Blocks, but above Ball Weevil. Pesky Dust is one of the handful I'm talking about when I say I like those just little guy aliens. I love the colour palette and those wings especially. The abilities come down to flight and more importantly, putting out this sleeping dust or fairy dust I guess, that puts others to sleep, then allowing Pesky Dust to go into their dreams, manipulating them for whatever reason they see fit, this even working on species like Celestial Sapiens somehow. I really love this alien, they're just so charming. The voice is probably the only bit I don't absolutely love, but it's perfectly serviceable. Below Heat Blast, but above Gravitac. Molestache continues the trend of simplistic powers on little guys. He's a mole man with a prehensile mustache that he can shape into all sorts, leading to fun little hair constructions. Pretty one note for me, but I see the charm. Above Ball Weevil, but under Walker Trout. The worst is simply stupid fun. Very ugly design, but that kind of fits. He's Ben's least favourite alien, leading to the name. His abilities come down to near indestructibility, but with the catch that despite being functionally he can still feel all of that pain all the same. Tricky one to place, I have to factor in just how much I like the idea of the worst, but with how much I'm not that fussed on looking at him. Below Arctiguana, but above Brainstorm. Kick and Hawk is yet another addition to the big strong guy aliens. He's a hand-to-hand guy in the vein of Wrath, and he gets a surprising amount of screen time on Omniverse after being unlocked. Again, he's perfectly serviceable, but I don't find much charm in the design. I do have a bit of a weakness for the villain of the species, but that doesn't change my ranking one bit. Below Fast Track, but above Blocks. simply for how good some of the action with him is. Topic is just great. I don't really feel like I see enough love for this transformation out there. Behind those softer edges and iron mask, he's so ugly he's terrifying. I personally prefer the idea that he's just purely terrifying, but either way, same result. Very much one note, but I like the idea here. He's an alien that just replicates the one time on screen between Ghost Freak and Zombozo from the classic series over and over again. I also really like the helmet, particularly the way it opens up with the air being released and the slow creaking as it undoes. Below Pesky Dust, but above Gravitag. Astrodactyl is Ben's Omniverse stand-in for Jet Ray. I've been over their similarities, their colour palettes, and somewhat overlapping power sets before. Again, Astrodactyl has the Omniverse charm I like so much. Him being a dinosaur doesn't really hurt either. The power sets always felt a bit odd to me. He can fly with those wings, but also uses a jetpack that's powered by the same energy that allows him to shoot lasers and make light constructions. The only slight negative, and I mean slight, is that I feel his proportions somewhat feel a bit off when he's just standing there, but generally he's a lot of fun, pretty much without fail. Below Jet Ray, but above Terraspin. Now one that's had a bit of a reputation on this channel as of late, Bullfrag. Canonically Ben's most handsome alien for whatever reason. Made all the more fun by his voice sounding so much like Sylvester Stallone. That and for whatever reason, he just makes every other member of the species look so nothing next to him. It'd be like if we met 4 species and none of them had any muscles. Continuing on that trend of Omniverse aliens having fun action sequences, Bullfrag really does. I like how he bounces around the place, a bit like Crashhopper, while also having that scrappy brawler feel, sort of. And all the frog related stuff only adds to that. Below Spitter, but above Cannonbolt. Really getting towards the tail end of things here, we have Atomics. Ben's Draggable Z Fighter meets Autobot from Transformers, voiced in a way that makes him feel more like Zap Brannigan in a robo-suit. He's a nuclear-powered big strong guy that just feels like an overwhelming force of nature. He can do all sorts, but the highlight for me was punching people into the atmosphere and creating a sun that presumably killed Zascare. Very charming and very silly, below Amphibian but above Edel. Gutrot was a really welcomed addition to Omniverse. I, for whatever reason, group him in with Gravitag as one of the greats. His body is a walking laboratory that can generate all types of gases, leading to all sorts. Being such a late addition to the series means there's not a lot of showings, but I liked him luring away the Waybads with the pheromones he created. I also think he's just got a stellar design. The exposed gas chamber in his torso, those big hands, those super expressive eyes are just great. The only thing I'm not crazy about is the Omnitrix placement, but I can live with that. Below Waybig, but above Ripjaws. And finally, thankfully ending on a real high note, we have Vampire. Ben's superhero vampire alien who, despite this slightly odd choice of clothing, has a stellar design. There's a whole episode dedicated to his species being revived and Ben subsequently unlocking him, using his general vampire powers along with his little mind control bats he can spit out to bring villains onto his side in order to stop the evil member of the species. I have a real weakness for fictional vampires anyway, and there's something that just simply works here. Not to mention, as many of you may be aware at this point, my even larger weakness for Renor system aliens. He'll be going below Swampfire but above Frankenstrike. And to wrap it up, let's go down the list. Ballweevil, Molestache, Walker Trout, Blocks, Kick and Hawk, Fast Track, Chameleon, Crashhopper, Nanomech, Buzzshock, Wildvine, Brainstorm, The Worst, Arctiguana, Spider Monkey, Terraspin, Astrodactyl, Jetray, Upchuck, Stinkfly, Wildmutt, Greymatter, Edel, Atomics, Amphibian, Chromastone, Cannonbolt, Bullfrag, Spitter, Water Hazard, Ripjaws, Goop, Echo, Gutrot, Waybig, Humongousaur, Alien X, Lodestar, Gravitack, Topic, Pesky Dust, Heat Blast, Forearms, Accelerate, Shock Squatch, Snarrow, Wrath, Ditto, Jury-Rig, Frankenstrike, Vampire, Swampfire, Eye Guy, Armadillo, Ghost Freak, Upgrade, Feedback, NRG, Diamond Head, Blitzwolfer, and finally at our number 1 spot, Big Chill. This was a lot. Thanks for watching.